This is the Chinwag Junkie Podcast. I'm your host, Joy Stone. Welcome to another episode. Is there people getting around? Are they worried? Are they anxious? But more than that, are they hopeful on top of the anxiety? Kind of counterintuitive, but I mean, I believe you can be anxious and still hopeful that the extension of powers won't go through because that's what they're about, right? The demonstrations are about.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, it's a good atmosphere. You know, I've gone for the last 2 days there. I wasn't able to make it today, but got a friend there, obviously getting some footage and catching up with people. And, you know, I've been going to rallies since 2011, since I started TOTT News. You know, in 2012 alone, I think I went to just every rally that there could be. It was like 150 rallies in the 1 year or something, just getting to know people and exploring their intellectual avenues and building my own perspectives and challenging things and seeing what the go has always been. So I've always loved protests, and it's always been good as an encouragement sort of thing, as a good way to network. And it's really been good to see old people there that I haven't seen in years. And I sort of I've never done a speech or anything at a rally. I've never done that. I sort of just hang out in the background, sort of just play my role as a journalist, so to speak, and not try to align my reporting with the personal sort of opinions or the rally itself. You know, even though I personally might agree with them, you know, you need to still have that separation. You can't get up there and, you know, be the leader of a rally and then report on that as well. It's a little bit of a conflict of interest, so to speak. So I let people do their own thing, and it's been really good to see the pressure on. They got really pissed off after the first day, mate, because Tricky and everyone were out there banging drums and making a lot of noise, and they were in the Parliament House trying to think of, you know, just go about their normal daily business. And word got back to the camp that had really annoyed them. So the next day, yesterday, they brought even more down. And he said, "Have you got pans or pots or whatever, bring them down and let's smash them out," because they did like a little sit-in protest from 8:30 in the morning or so. And it's been pretty cool to see, because yesterday a few politicians, 4 or 5 of them, come out and were giving us an applause and thumbs up and everything like that. So there's been a lot of pressure on the I believe it was the deputy commissioner or something like that has pressured Anastasia, get out of our lives, was on the Courier Mail, saying that they don't want the state of emergency extended. So there is a lot of optimism. It's been pushed back to March 26th now, I believe. That's when the state of emergency ends in Queensland on their website. They were supposed to have a vote this week or something like that, and it's been pushed back on the website. But there is a lot of optimism. But at the same time, Anastasia said, mate, she's come out and doubled down on them, saying that they're necessary. She's defended it. And Jeanette Young is still, even though she's the Governor General now, is still yapping her mouth, getting involved with stuff, and is saying that they're necessary for Queensland. So we'll have to see, mate. We'll have to see how it goes, how things are justified. For me, a lot of it, you can see that a lot of it comes from the Federal Biosecurity Act when you talk about their justifications, and that's extended until April. So I'm not sure if they're going to let go of it in March 26 if the Federal Act is still in. They might just say, well, as per that being still in, we can extend this until however long. But I'm not sure, mate. We'll have to see how it goes.
So the state has to have, so the Federal Act has to be employed in being used. I don't know how to phrase that, but anyways, federal has to be used for the state to warrant their emergency powers. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the Federal Biosecurity Act, which came in 2015, I remember reporting on that, just saying, well, if this ever was enacted, God help us all. And next thing it was, I couldn't believe it. Obviously, it's all just unfolded. You know, who would have ever thought they would have went that route, though, with the pandemic to shake everything up? But the Federal Biosecurity Act sort of allows the states, as you've said, to enact their public health measures. And even though it is, again, a state thing, a lot of them refer to the Federal Biosecurity Act as the justification for the things that they're enacting. So, for example, it sets out the guidelines. The state shall enforce these measures, and then the states will enforce those measures as per set out in the federal act. But it's more of an instruction for them on how to do it. So they sort of intertwine it together, and it's the same trickery, mate, that we see with Scott Morrison saying, well, I'm not responsible for anything. I can't do anything. It's all the states. Even though you know that it can funnel down and that it's all interconnected and intertwined, I feel that they might be doing that same trickery with the Federal Security Act being extended till April and using that as justification. Well, because biosecurity measures are still in and we still can't go to the Northern Territory and all of these things that are per that, we're going to use that as justification.
So do you think the feds will drop their emergency powers come next month? Next month.
Well, that'd be interesting to see. I don't know how they're going to keep doing this narrative. I've
fallen apart. The rest of the world has given up on it, all but given up on it. And here's Australia and New Zealand. And yeah, it seems like we're doubling down and forcing more boosters in everyone. And it's like, why? Like, whether you believe the shots work or not, the overwhelming evidence right now is that they don't work on Omicron, and that, you know, they expect us to line up for another fucking shot of something that doesn't work. Like, whether it had zero side effects or not, whatever your thoughts on it, the fucking thing doesn't work. Why would you get it? Why?
The definition of insanity, mate.
For sure. I know I went on a bit of a tangent there, but anyways. So
no, you're right.
Yeah. So back to it. So carry on. I think I cut you off there. Sorry.
No, mate. Well, it'll be interesting to see, because, as you said, the rest of the world is just sort of moving on and their narratives have evolved and things are getting more interesting. For us, it's just chaos. But I was anticipating that this whole election thing and the floods and everything that's going on now, the war with Ukraine, was sort of going to take a back seat for the election. Then they're going to ramp cases up again. But to your point, it does run out in April. So how are they going to extend it? Are they really going to let go of it? The only thing that I've seen is Brad Hazard has warned cases will spike again within a few weeks. And he's already starting to push that rhetoric, meaning that they're going to start hyping this COVID stuff up before the election. Like, they're not even going to let that period go. They're going to intertwine it with reasons for the state to look strong in true wag the dog fashion. But it seems potentially that they're going to ramp it up. And it's not like these justifications for the laws to continue or anything big. Queensland, the whole time, has had barely any justifications for their extensions. We've had barely any cases, barely any lockdowns compared to the rest of the country, for the last 2 years. However, they just keep saying, well, because the border's closed, we'll just extend it because there's still dangers in other states. And that was it. That's all they needed to extend it. Just the most minute reasons. So they might just ramp cases up, say that that's the reason we need to extend it again.
So that's what Mark McGowan's using. Similar sort of rhetoric, if you want to call it that. What's happening over in the East, we don't want that to happen over here.
Exactly.
Yeah,
perfect example.
Yeah, right. So do you think that more people are like not caring about cases, so to speak? Like, I remember when it's been wild how it's unfolded, but when it all started, coming out and whatnot, we thought that it was like a ridiculous 10 to 15% death rate or something crazy like that. I'm talking first up, really early on. I didn't think that government, just putting it out there, I didn't think government should be allowed. I don't think government should be allowed to lock people in their own home for any reason at all, ever. But that's my own feelings of it. But as it's gone on, and there's been more and more details come out about it, and cases, whether they go up or down, it seems that the deaths are always going down. So do you think that the difference between the deaths and the cases are going to drive the average person to start thinking, why the fuck are we still carrying on with this? Or do you think there's been, I don't know, too much damage done?
That's a big rabbit hole. I hope people are done with all this nonsense. It seems, to your point, that there is some sort of more relaxed mentality, certainly from the start, in terms of case numbers. And it's interesting with lockdown for a single case, or there's been a cluster of cases, and then we opened up and there's thousands of cases, but everyone kept going on. And there could be a number of reasons. It could be that people believe that the vaccine is effective and they've got X amount of time before it weans off. And so the cases aren't so severe. It doesn't mean that the hospitalization, it's almost like because they're jabbed now they'll believe the arguments that were said, 10 months ago about cases not being severe and all this stuff, and death rates being low and death rates being questionable in terms of how they're classified, all of this stuff that was exposed. Now, because they've had the jab, that's almost a justification. Like, well, I don't have a bad condition because I'm protected now. Really, when they would have just had a mild case the entire time, this whole vaccine operation's just been thrown in there for something that was turned out to be a mild flu, So it's almost like that's the justification. And I'm interested to see what happens once they really do start pushing the boosters. But at the same time, again, and I've spoken about this concept of there's two different realities now. There's the people that haven't got the jab that are still struggling to get back into society and this stuff. And there's the people that have got the jab that will just line up for the booster, and this is their new normal now. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think that, and to your point, are people too damaged? It's almost like the constant informational flow has psychologically warped people through this 2 years, the constant changing of narratives to the point where they're just switched off from everything. They just almost become robots, drones that just go one by one and don't really care about anything, don't feel or connect to anything now.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of studies that say that, isolation does exactly that. It turns off all your emotions. It can drive you into depression and all of the bad stuff. They reckon isolation for a human is worse than a pack a day, 15 cigarettes, something along the line. Smoking, it's worse than smoking. And for a government, any government, to lock healthy people in isolation is crazy. Absolutely fucking crazy. And like George Christian says, one day soon, someone's going to crack this, and the government's going to be in a hell of a lot of fucking trouble for all of it, because it's overextend, it's government overreach, and it was unjustified. It's unjustifiable, but it was unjustified.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And you were right about this whole notion. You can't lock down healthy people for any reason. All right. This is something that's creeped in now, and this is dangerous. I wrote an article talking about how herd mentality is the seed of totalitarian societies, because it's not the tyrants you have to fear. They're just a small little group of parasites. The people fairly outnumber them. But once the people are brainwashed and manipulated into acting on their behalf and believing their messages, that's when things can quickly go down a bad path. And that's one thing that has emerged during this concept. It's the erosion of the individual right, that my rights, the rights of the individual always supersede the collective. And if they don't, you're heading towards communism, you're heading towards socialism, you're heading towards not even those types of structures, but fascism. You're heading towards a fascist state, because when people tell you that your rights, you have to give up your own rights for the good of the community, for the greater good, that's when people's minds have been warped. And it's like, can you even see how things were before if you're believing that at that point? Because that's a complete 180 to what the principles of freedom and democracy and what the West has built. It's a complete opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I have these sorts of conversations with people, one of the fucking, I hate it, I roll my eyes every time I come across it, is if you think you're living in a totalitarian state now, you should try and live in insert North Korea, let's say North Korea, try living there. It's like, I understand that Australia, or any sort of first world country, is probably not going to line up lots of the population and shoot them in public square. They're probably not going to bring back hanging people as a demonstration in town square. That's probably not going to happen. Probably. It's possible, but it's probably not going to happen. But what is very possible is, as we've seen, you can't work here, you can't come here, you can't do this, and you can't hang around those people, and that has happened. That it has happened. The unvaxxed are still not welcome in pubs, clubs, and those sorts of places. And like, I don't really care about that, but it's the first step. And even if they do bring in, do drop all the vax mandates, I was talking to a guy, his name's Michael Angel, about the digital ID, my last podcast. And that gets really scary really quick with what they can do with the not the crypto, the digital currency that is being talked about, the digital currency that Australia wants to bring in, and linking it to a digital ID. They can lock you out of everything. You can't buy bread anymore because you've posted the wrong thing on Facebook. That is a real issue that could actually happen. So no, they're probably again, not going to shoot you, but they could really do some damage to you. They could really make you behave yourself, quote unquote.
That's it. And that's I always call it's the brave new world order. They don't have to do this through fear. Huxley always spoke about that this system is a highly technocratic, highly medically controlled system where the people are brainwashed, but it's a system through pleasure and acceptance rather than fear and beating. And this is what people have been lulled into even well before COVID. COVID's almost been the final operation for their mental brains, but this is what's been happening. And you're completely right. I've spoken for years on China's social credit system. And I wrote an article in 2018 saying China's social credit system will reach Australia one day. And it's because this was the model that they've set out for the world. This was the perfect technocratic model to control people, as you said, morph their behaviors. If you don't do something this way, you can't buy food. If you don't do something this way, and we've seen this happen in China under their social credit system. We've seen people segregated and blacklisted from society. Millions of people can't catch trains, can't catch a plane because some of them said bad things about the government, some journalists, and your social credit, almost like a Black Mirror episode on Netflix that was preparing us for this type of thing.
And
yeah, well, it's interesting. If you trace the Netflix and the co-founder of Netflix, he's related to Sigmund Freud, and Sigmund Freud's nephew was Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, and the co-founder of Netflix is the nephew of Edward Bernays.
Really?
So
I didn't know that. That's news. That's news.
So it's like a continuous process of preparing people for what the next stage is. And this social credit system, it was almost the perfect model because, and this was one of the most fascinating things I discovered about the Chinese model, was the people. You would think, how could people ever accept this? And China went through such a morphing through their cultural revolution when Mao said we need to destroy everything that was traditional. We need to, and sort of train the young to rebel against their parents and bring in a new age of China. There was a massive distrust through that whole process, and tens of millions have died, and all of that stuff that we've heard about through Mao's China, that they become a very distrusting society in one another. And they would interview people about the Chinese social credit system, and they would say, no, this is good because now I know who's not a bad person. Mm-hmm. Now I know everyone around me who's a bad person that I could potentially interact with, whether he's a robber or I can see them all around me now and I feel safe. And it was an acceptance thing based on just a massive distrust and a collapse within their culture and society, and this move towards technology that they accepted that. And I think we're going through a similar process now. I didn't see it at the time that it would come so quick, but we're going through that similar process where this is the building of that. If you haven't had your vaccinations, you're already being told what's a good and not good behavior. And it's only a few steps from there, as you said, digital ID, digital cash.
And it's all being talked about, the technologies there, the infrastructure's being put in place. You know, QR codes are a thing now. Like they're not just. I remember a few years ago when I first seen a QR code, it was for just a product, and I just looked up what the hell a QR code was and found out it was just a barcode. And then I looked a little bit more and I found out what they can do with the QR code. And they can store everything about you on a QR code in a cloud. And I was like, oh, that's wild. That's interesting. And, you know, a few years later, we're all checking into Woolies with a QR code. Well,
they were so unpopular. No one used QR codes when they first come out.
No, because they were too difficult. Basically, they already had a barcode. Why the hell would you make a barcode hard? You know.
Yep. Took me years to learn what one was. I kept going, "What's this stupid, thing? This design?" And you got to pull your phone out, and it's like, what? Yeah. Because it took me ages to upgrade to a smartphone to begin with.
Oh yeah.
I was there right till the end of the disconnection of the 2G era, mate. It was me and hundreds of thousands of elderly people were furious at that moment. The 2G was disconnected.
I was furious because I still owned a phone that could hook on to 2G, so I could get reception from, where I was living to anywhere. I didn't have to worry about that. And then they dropped the 2G, and now even now, driving from where I live to, say, Harvey Bay, there's like 45-minute gap where there's no reception at all. It's like, come on. I had reception 10 years ago in this place, right here, but not anymore. But anyway, little side note.
Yeah, mate, good point. But digital ID, mate, that's what they're pushing, and it's an international thing. It's a unified thing, just like COVID was, to push for people to adapt this. And that's what we talk about, the morphing of people. Remember, there was hundreds of thousands of people in the street protesting national ID in Australia just a few decades ago.
What was it called? Me and George talked about this. The Australia card. It was
the Australia card.
Yeah. And it was, not unanimously, but it was voted down by a very, very large, but that's what I mean. They just put something out, the Australia card. Oh no, we're not ready for that. We'll just pull it in here and we'll keep it, we'll keep it tucked away on this shelf here. We'll try again later. And it doesn't matter what government's involved. It doesn't matter what political party, what side of left or right, it's on the shelf. It's going to come out again. It is there. Yeah. It's going to come out again. And again, talking to George, that was one of the things that he was saying. He's been in politics for 11 years at a local level, all the way through to currently at the federal level. And he's never had an email, phone call, or anyone in the street ask him about bringing a digital ID in. When's it going to happen? Why hasn't it happened already? You know, and he doesn't know anyone that has happened to. The reason he gets asked about it now is like, why is this digital ID coming in? Where did it come from? Not when is it getting implemented, I'm looking forward to it, but where did it come from? And why is it here? Why is it in Australia? And I think a lot of people need to be starting to ask these questions, because where did it come from? I know I've never fucking asked a politician at any level, bring in an ID. I want to know about everything, about everyone all the time. I don't want to know that. I think privacy is worth more than that. But yeah, and I think we really need to ask that question. And I believe he is, and I believe there's a few more around the place that are, but it just doesn't seem like, I don't know, they're not hiding it. And by they I mean, corporate media and politicians, they're not hiding it. But it's not being promoted very loudly about what it is and when it's going to happen. And it is being discussed, but not, I wouldn't call it an open discussion, right?
No, and that's why websites like myself at TOTT News, we've grown, because people have to do that long digging and research just to find something that should be open, that should be available to everyone, and you have to go looking for it, and that's where this whole MyGov system has always been designed to manifest like that. And this is where it's coming in with MyGov ID, which they've been trialing, which they put $200 million into, because people don't realize we have this thing in Australia called the Digital Transformation Agency, the DTA, Digital Transformation Agency, which has been very influential over the last half a decade in terms of they get heaps of money from the government. They're a wing of the government to implement all of this stuff. They're behind smart cities, and they're behind all of these types of innovations in technology, and how can Australia advance, and keeping us up to speed with 5G and everything. This is where you find all of it through the Digital Transformation Agency. And they put $200 million into this facial recognition trial for MyGov ID, for people that are on welfare, or students, or on disability, or whatever the case may be, and they have to log in. And we see that over the last few years, they've been merging the other systems. Taxation has now come into MyGov. You access tax through there. There's been a whole range of other systems that come in. Medicare has come in, which they put in with MyHealthGov, or MyGov Health, whichever one it is. I can't remember, that they introduced a few years ago. But all of these systems have been interlocking within MyGov. And the thing is the more the sort of system goes down and the Agenda 2030 plan starts to manifest, and you think of people losing their jobs, they end up on welfare, they end up on these systems. They're being funneled into these systems where at the moment it's only an option. Sign in with your face, sign in with digital identity. You can actually go create your own digital identity and go along with it now. But that's not going to be optional forever. That's soon going to become the norm, just like iPhones. Just like iPhones had optional fingerprint recognition to sign you in, that then become the norm for newer phones. And now facial recognition is the optional sign in. But in future phones, that's going to become the mandatory way to get in. And it slowly evolves like this. And this is what MyGov is designed for, to slowly evolve to become the digital identity hub, to get all the services in there. And once everything becomes cashless and all this type of stuff, and you can't go to a tax agent to lodge a tax, and you have to go to MyGov, that's where it's all going to come in through this system they're doing.
Well, it's almost there, as far as, I do believe I had a MyGov account when did they do the tax thing? Last year? The year before?
Yeah, it was a couple of years. 2
Yeah,
or 3 years ago.
I think I had a MyGov account, but I hadn't used it in that long. I couldn't even remember what email it was. It turned out to be 2 email addresses ago. So years, literally years and years. I must have signed up to it when it first came out. Maybe, I don't know. I can't even remember doing it. Regret that. But anyway, it wouldn't have mattered because, like I was saying, with the ATO being introduced into the MyGov app, now I didn't even see my what's the end of year tax letter that you get from your employers.
Yep.
It's all automatic now. It goes straight through there. I didn't have to do a thing. Not a freaking.
That was a big change. The one touch system. I remember when that come in and I said, hang on a minute. Because if you think about this, right, you go to lodge your tax with that certificate every year, it almost means you've got a year to do whatever it is before then you go and take that group certificate and you lodge it. So the government only knows what you're up to every year that you come in and do that. Now with this one-touch system, the way that they automatically have that at the end of the year is every employer had to sign on to providing your pay details on a weekly or fortnightly or monthly basis, whatever you got paid, every single pay to the ATO. So they now know every single week what you're getting paid, what you're doing, compared to getting a group certificate and just going in. That was a huge change, mate.
Yeah, and then you add on top of that with a digital currency, and I mean they fine you at the end of the year for whatever. That'll be the next one. That'll be the next thing. That will be the next thing. It'll be just all again. Me and Michael the last podcast I done, he was talking about driving down the road and with the digital currency. Going too fast, whatever, flash for cash, get you, and bam, your account's got your money's gone out of your account already before the flash even goes off. It's already over and done. You're $200 poorer. I think that will be a real issue come tax time, and I don't think people will realize that until it's already in play. And it does come to their tax time, because I like to think that I can't say that I'm on top of everything because there's just so much. But I like to keep my finger on the pulse, so to speak. And I didn't even know that was happening. That was like, oh, this is just how you do it now. Oh, fucking since when? When did that happen? And so that one really caught me by surprise. But I mean, like, it's a thing now. That's what'll happen this year. It's what happened every year until I don't know when. I don't know how you wind something like that back. It's never been done before. I don't think they'll make it very easy to do in the future. So,
and it stays in play because of convenience and efficiency, mate, and all the things that they can do. This is how it all gets justified in. We can now catch more tax evaders, and we can keep a pulse on all of these people that are doing all of this when it really is a surveillance tool. It's the same with the driverless vehicle push. Oh, we need to get that on the road because it prevents less deaths based on compared to human error. Yeah, but that's what's behind the agenda, and it's all incremental to the point where, as you said, you just wake up one day, just like the frog boiling in the pot, and you don't realize that you're being cooked because it's slowly boiling, the temperature's slowly rising, and then all of a sudden, hang on a minute, what's been going on here? This isn't how things used to be. And then all of a sudden you can't go back because now it's justified. It's the better way. It's the new way, mate.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
The new way. What have you said you travel around a bit? What do you reckon about the fuel prices at the moment? That hurt?
Yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah. Well, I'm not a big driver, actually. Growing up in Southeast Queensland, I've always just either caught public transport or taxied or Ubered everywhere. I sort of, when I was following the whole that they're going to hand over your licenses to national facial recognition systems and all that type of stuff, when I was pretty young, I avoided all of that. I tried to make a mission to avoid all of that. It obviously hurts when you're out in the country. Like, don't get me wrong, but for the way that they're going with all this smart city infrastructure and everything, it's like, if I got a lot of friends that live in Brisbane City, and it's almost a foreign thing to have a car there. They're like, why do you need a car? We just duck around every 2 minutes or whatever. So I've sort of been raised in that era. I know how to drive and stuff, obviously, but in terms of licenses and keeping up with that cost, just fuel, and I sort of saw where that was going. I realized that they're going to drive that up for driverless vehicles and Agenda 2030 and all that type of stuff. And I've tried to keep off the road as much as I can. But it's crazy to see. I saw there was one post that was talking about fuel prices. It said it's cheaper now to catch a flight from Tasmania to another state. I think it was Tasmania to Sydney, than it is to fill up a tank and drive from Launceston to Hobart within Tasmania, because that's how high fuel prices are.
I don't doubt it, but give it a couple of weeks and those flights will be definitely getting up there as well. I mean, it has to. It's economics, right? You raise the price of fuel, everything relies on fuel, from the fucking harvester getting the food out of the field all the way through to the trucks getting it to the store. Everything runs on fuel, which is depending on how you look at it, unfortunate or good, but it's gonna be I think Scott Morrison got it right when he said it's gonna be a tough 10 years. What a frigger.
It's gonna be rough decade, folks. Yeah. Strap yourselves in. And it's right in front of your face now. They just put this type of stuff out there and tell you this, get ready for it. This is how it's going to be. Jacinda Ardern said at the start of the pandemic period, we're not going to come out of lockdowns till there's a vaccine. And then probably then, maybe not. And this is when everyone was saying 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And it's like, hang on a minute. We know this is not going to end. And then you just find these little gems that go, here you go. Gear up for the fun ahead, mate.
Yeah. The shifting goalposts. I mean, it's been plenty. But tell me about the smart cities. You've brought them up a couple of times. What do you know about them? What do you think about them?
Smart cities, yeah. Well, that's another key part of China's surveillance state. They've got, it's either 50 or 500. I'm going to go 50 just to be conservative, but I think it might be 500 smart city trials or pilots when they launch their social credit system. It's like a foundation of what they're doing, just hyper sensors everywhere, 200 million facial recognition cameras they have installed everywhere. And this is what in Australia we've been doing. So the smart city agenda in 2019, the government said, here's our smart city plan. We want to, again, the Digital Transformation Agency, we want to transform Australia's major cities into smart cities. And they've, over the last 2 years, Darwin has been transformed into a smart city, Newcastle, Melbourne, Sydney. And it's not like they're tearing everything down and there's new infrastructure up and it's a new futuristic society. That's not what a smart city means. It's more the calculated implementation of more facial recognition cameras, which Melbourne City has them everywhere. I think it was Melbourne and Perth turned them on without alerting the public that they were on. And Perth has had a massive push towards it. All over Australia, there's been transformations in terms of putting in LED smart lights, putting in LED sensors, putting in technology that can track people's movement within the city, obviously just for business insight. So the businesses of the area can know their customers. But this type of technology transforms everything. And the whole vision of it is that's going to interlock with smart train lines and driverless vehicles, and it's really just going to transform into a tech dystopia where it's going to look on the surface like it's all fun and games, but in China they've got so many facial recognition cameras that link into their social credit system that if you just jaywalk across the street, mate, the camera sees it, automatically knocks a point off your social credit. And this is what a smart city is. It's like the city's watching you. It's like the city's alive. the lights that they're putting in, they turn off when there's not human activity. So they don't just stay on all night in certain areas. So maybe you're trying to leave this certain smart city and all of a sudden a light comes on to spot you. It's this type of thing, and it interlocks a lot with the regions as well. There's a lot of installing of technologies to monitor wildlife and everything, and surveillance squads that patrol a lot of regional Australia, that they're really sort of interlocking this dystopian prison in my mind, where that's just the foundation. Where are they going to go from there is what I want to know. Are they going to be able to hack into your bodies? Is this going to interlock with vaccines or microchips? How does this relate to the individual? But the Australian government have been doing it. And the most interesting part is they admit that the creation of smart cities, the Australian government, is part of Australia's commitment to Sustainable Development Goal 11 of Agenda 2030. So they admit that on their website. And that's, again, going back to what you said, this global international plan to introduce sustainability when we really know that that's code word for more control.
Yeah, so, definitely. That interaction that you were touched on briefly there between government and business, that sends chills up my spine. I don't think that government should get involved in any sort of business because basically there's trade-offs in everything. Absolutely everything you do in life, there's trade-offs. You put time in option A, you're taking time from option B. It's the way it is. You can't get out of it. Now, when the government gets involved with business, take the solar farms, rebate scheme, whatnot, if they didn't put that money into solar and let the market decide, I firmly believe that we would have had nuclear power by now in Australia. And we've come a long way since Fukushima was built in the 60s. And I think it would have been relatively new nuclear power. I'm talking probably last 10 years. And nuclear is fantastic. If you want to get on the bloody global warming train, why are you against nuclear? I don't understand that at all. But when governments get involved, they've taken away all that money that could have gone into nuclear and even making that better. And they're putting it into solar. Now, I've got no problem with solar. I think it's a great fucking idea as well. It's come a long way as well. Back when my grandparents had a solar hot water system installed, it was rubbish. That was 30 years ago, though. And we've come a long way. They're fairly efficient now. And, arguably, that's a good thing, but who knows who knows what could have come out of it on the other end? And it's all because of government has gotten involved. And now they're getting involved with, like you said, with the electric cars and, being able to do whatever trickery with those fucking things. And again, I like electric cars. I'm a fucking big fan of the Teslas. They're insane pieces of machinery and technology. But why is government getting involved with them? I don't like that. Why is government tracking people on the street to allow local businesses to know who's coming and going and where and why and who they're with and groups and all that sort of stuff? Like, it just, in my mind, it's not good. It's scary, to say the least, when government gets involved with business.
You make a good point, for sure. It's always been the government, and that's where it's always been this concept of separation between the government and affairs. I've never been a big fan of government. I think that governance is needed, but I think that would naturally come from any society, right? People taking out the trash, people wanting to do the sewerage, things like that. The governance needs to happen. You can't all just live in trash and throw trash everywhere. There needs to be some sort of system. But government coming in and thinking like they run that system when it's just the people doing it anyway, and they're just a bureaucracy over the top. It's always been wrong. They've never done anything that's been helpful for society. Just look at these floods that have just happened. Government have been absolutely useless, and it's been the community that have rebuilt, that have bought the helicopters in, that have bought the food and have done all this type of stuff. It's been the people. Community always is king. And you're spot on, mate, because it's not the technology itself. And this is what I say to people, whether it's smartphones or whatever the case may be. Some of this stuff is incredible, whether it's developing electric cars or the fact that we can just talk now, mate, over the power of this magic, the internet. It's incredible if we just had a decentralization from government and from the powers that are controlling it, using it for the wrong reasons. And they discovered this type of stuff first, and that's why they're using it to control us. But it's not like the inherent technology itself is useless. I would love to live in a world where we're advancing technology and we get somewhere like with the Jetsons, you know, but we know that the electric vehicle push is just to normalize it. So then they can bring in driverless vehicles.
Which I'm not against either, right? I would love to get in a car and not have a driver and, you know, sit back, get pissed with my mates in the back seat while it's driving us to the pub or something. But I don't want, it's who's in control, who gets to decide. That's always the questions that I always first ask. Who controls it and who decides? It's the only two questions. If you don't get good responses from that, it's probably a bad idea. And it's worked out fairly well for me for 34 years, so I'm going to keep rolling with it. Yeah,
mate. No, you're right. It's even facial recognition, and this is what they use. They use all the good points to get people to accept it. Because these are amazing things, but they've always got the sleight of hand behind. And like facial recognition, it would be great if we had systems that could help to identify people that commit real crimes like they say that it's used for. But it's not used for that. It's not just turned on, oh, we'll go into the archives because something happened at this shop and we'll look specifically at that shop and we'll find the people that come there in a 24-hour period, like sort of selectively localize it in and have it off when it's not on. That's not the case. It's on all the time, monitoring every single person. The fact that the ratio of them picking up crimes versus them just monitoring the populace is just astoundingly out of proportion. Yeah. And so they push all of this stuff with just such a gleam of safety and security, and it's going to be so good. And I'd love driverless vehicles and stuff, you know, but we know it's just going to be you're driving, it's going to get to know you with AI, it's going to play you advertisements while you drive, it's going to say, hey, do you want to call in for your trusted chicken burger from Macca's that you've had 3 times this week? You know, it's going to get to know you and advertise to you and try to upsell you, and it's just going to end up just being this whole consumeristic Brave New World nightmare for real.
And the problem is that it's going to be forced by government, which makes it compulsory. And that's the issue for me. That is the issue. I wouldn't care if I bought a car, or if I could even, you know, own nothing and be happy, right? If I could rent a car or get in a cab or something and it just blasts fucking ads at me and my cab's free, I wouldn't mind that. But the thing is that, like you said, it's going to learn who I am. Facebook does it, you know, all these social media apps, they learn who you are and they target ad you. Again, that's fine by me. But when government gets involved and they make it that way, you have to do that way, and you have to behave a certain way. And now you've got to listen to propaganda about how good the government is. And you know, you mightn't think that, again, it's who controls it, right? You mightn't think that the people in power at the moment, you might think the sun shines out their ass, all of them, the from state to federal, you might like them all. But what about the next guy? what about the next guy? Do you think he's gonna use it for nefarious reasons? Do you think he's gonna expand the powers? Because that always happens. Government does what government does, and their powers are going to get broader. They're going to get stronger, and I think it's going to go the way that you're talking about, which is scary.
Which is it is troubling to think about that could become a reality, but it's the way they just continuously push it, and as you said, it's going to get to, it's this whole concept, and then where does it end there? What's the next person going to do? And one thing that you find is all of our legislation, all of our safeguards that we have for this type of stuff, mate, are always playing catch up. It's not like they introduce this technology and then say, oh, well, we've got the safeguards to protect you from this being used in the wrong way. For the last 20 years, our legislation is playing catch up with emerging technologies. So we're still trying to figure out how are we going to regulate facial recognition? How are we going to stop this? How are we going to ensure the privacy? This legislation's still being developed. They're just doing a reformation of Australia's intelligence laws now. But we've had facial recognition in major cities. Most of the cameras owned by China and security companies providing that as Chinese companies. Mm-hmm. We've had that for years. Who's watching that? Who is safeguarding that? We're always playing catch up. So we'll find it'll be the same thing with electric vehicles and stuff. There's going to be no safeguards. There's going to be no protection for your liberties because the people that are in power are still trying to understand what it even is. And we've seen this with Facebook and all this type of stuff. This is how big tech and big conglomerates come in, and they're able to supersede governments, because they're able to just introduce things that are so popular, the people buy them, this whole consumer market, and the government really can't do much about it, even if they wanted to, which they don't. They want it to just be out of control.
They want to use that stuff. That's one of the arguments that I come across. One of those eye roll arguments, you don't think that your phone tracks you all the time. You got Facebook, they're tracking you as well. And it's like, yes, but I know that. And I don't doubt that the government isn't doing that. Anyone can buy that metadata, but at least at the moment they can't openly admit it. Whereas with when the digital ID comes in, not if, but I firmly believe it will, when that comes in, they can openly admit it. They can use it against you for whatever reason. They can censor your Facebook posts. Like, that law is actually already in place, right? Intelligence agencies are allowed to go on anyone's Facebook without a warrant and change, alter, delete. I think the exact words are any Facebook post that they want or need to, or whatever they think is needed, which is censorship in no uncertain terms. That's exactly what it is. And big tech is already doing enough of that, and they're backed by government as well. Another eye roll argument is that they're a company and that they can censor whoever for whatever reason that they want. And yes, that is true. But the government is, more so in America, the government's telling them who they have to censor. They're effectively a branch of government. Yeah, I've
and you remember here in this country, mate, after the New Zealand event happened, I won't say what it was because of YouTube censors, if this is going to be uploaded on YouTube, mate, but ISP providers, they were told to block harmful or extremeful content during that time. There were censorships in Australia. This is the power that they have, just to block things out and to morph what people can and can't see. And, there's always that eye roll argument, like you said, you've got a phone and your phone's tracking you and stuff, and Facebook and all this stuff. But the difference is I almost see that as like a projection of them pushing their unwillingness to understand Facebook from the beginning onto me. It's like, yeah, Facebook do all of that, but at the same time, I'm agreeing to sign up. Yeah. I don't provide my face on there. And for the few times that I do provide my face to platforms and stuff, I feel more comfortable going up against a corporation for misusing my image and misusing my data than I do up against the government. It's a completely different boat once the government start doing it, because you haven't agreed to that. You haven't agreed when you signed up for a license, you didn't agree for that to be handed over to a national facial recognition database. That wasn't part of the terms and conditions. But Facebook and these companies, you agree to it. It's an open contract. And it's like, well, sorry that you uploaded your face all over Facebook, mate. That's not my problem. And the powers that be out there know what your kid's bum looks like, mate, because you upload so much. Like, that's not my problem. For me, I've kept it very minimal. I protect my data. I've got a photo of either TOTT News or Truman Show or something like that, just Truman laughing. I'm protective of that stuff. And if it is misused in some way by a corporation, that I was more eager to go along for that route and challenge that than I am with government. And now it's not even that these things are separated anymore. To your point, government is interwoven itself into this big tech conglomerate. They've come together, which I think they were always meant to do. You know, we talk about Facebook and their foundings through CIA and all of these types of, you know, weird. They were designed to be intelligence gathering sources. You know, we knew that from the start, and now they're sort of coming back together and joining in to the point where you're not agreeing to it. So these people that say this type of stuff, it's a completely different realm. Even though, yes, technically we are in the online space. Yes, technically they are similar things about our data and our names and things like this, but it's a completely different system if you don't know how that's happening.
Yes.
And even on your iPhone, you can see how your data is being used. These companies have been pressured by privacy groups for the last decade to become more transparent about this. And they've been hounded through massive data leaks to tighten up their systems. It's the government that don't have realm. And so it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
In my estimation.
Completely agree. Absolutely. 100%. What else? What do you know about the biolabs in the Ukraine?
Honestly, I haven't looked too much into it, man. I haven't really. I come from the perspective of this whole thing is a wag the dog movie set, because I'm just completely skeptical on things. I know people probably want me to talk about the war a bit more and all that type of stuff and labs and bioweapons and stuff like that. And I have tried to get people, Dr. TJ Cole's writes for the website every month, and he's written about lab leaks and stuff. I try to get those perspectives out there because I don't think I'm the be all and end all. But for me, it's just, I almost see it like a massive stage show that's happening. And I see that all of these counter narratives, just like at the start of COVID, oh, it's a bioweapon attack, we're going to be dead, and oh, Trump's going to drain the swamp, or there was 100 narratives, we're going to go to war with China, there's going to be economic collapse. It's almost like I just try to avoid getting swept up within what the current scene's getting swept up in. I try to look for what's going on while people's attentions are on there. But I could be wrong. As I said, there could be things going on there. I've heard that it's all related to Biden and all this type of stuff, but I don't follow it too much. It's, so, for me, I sort of look,
I'm pretty similar. I think there's a hell of a lot more than we're being told, which sort of brings me to what the fuck is going on with the corporate media? Like, okay, let's well, I haven't watched 7, 10, 9, ABC, whatever, for a long time. And I'm talking like shit. When they broadcasted and got behind the war of Iraq and justified it with, I know it's America-centric rather, but our media was well on board with that. The weapons of mass destruction shit, all the lies, and then you know, America done this huge campaign, and Australia was involved in some form or another, and you know, and everyone was like up in arms against you know, Iraq, and you know, they were all for it, all for the war. And then it sort of come out that, oh, maybe there wasn't any WMDs. I was just like, nah, fuck it. I'm done with you bastards. Like that's like one of the biggest fucking bold-faced lies ever. And there wasn't even an apology. No one was held to account. Nothing. And that's when I really lost faith in the corporate media, the whole lot of them, because not one of them asked a fucking politician a single question about any of it, nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought that was fucking horseshit. Now I know you're not in the mainstream, quote unquote, because fuck, they're not very mainstream anymore. But yeah, what do you see as the problems with the corporate media?
Yeah, mate, it's fascinating. I completely agree with you on Iraq. I mean, and I always say that to people. How can you, if someone lied to you in your own personal life, you look at them a bit shady. If they openly lie to you about something and they're continuously lying to you, you cut them off. You get them out of your life. You're a liar. You're not healthy for my relationship. But when government does it, weapons of mass destruction, incubators and babies in incubators, rather, mate. All of this stuff that was happening all turned out to be a massive fraud. The CIA admitted to continuously creating fake Bin Laden videos after he died, and late 2001. They just kept this whole thing going, and for me, it was like, I'm not going to trust anything these people say. They've already shown me through a track record that they can't be trusted. And so they're going to have to convince me that they're telling the truth from that point. But a lot of people are the complete opposite. And the mainstream media is the glue that sort of hold that together. How quickly things would change overnight if the media told people what were going on, what was really going on. If they showed people
questions,
ask questions, or just showed perspectives. There's a big argument that Vietnam was a massive failure because they were showing some of the images on there and people were getting outraged at it. So they said, well, we don't need to show people that again. We'll just show people what they need to hear. We don't need to tell them, what they want to hear. We'll tell them what they need to hear, what we believe they need to hear. And that's the role that traditionally the role of the media has been, to reinforce the popular opinion of the masses. That's what the role of the media was. It was designed to be a reporting mechanism to say, this is what the people care about and talk about, and this is what they want to know, and this is what's on their mind, to reinforce the popular opinion. That's what I learned when I was training to become a journalist, because I wanted to become a journalist and get into all of this. And I loved writing from a young age, but you soon find out when you're learning how to instill fear to manipulate emotions, and when you're learning all of these tactics that are just textbook media, hyperbole and all this type of stuff, you're like, well, what benefit does this have? And then you can't criticize government and things like this. Why is that the case? Well, it's because the media is such a powerful tool. It's such a powerful entity designed to keep people within a spell. That's why they call it programming.
Yeah.
And it's a continuous cycle of propaganda that's designed just to keep people believing the narrative. But how quickly things would change overnight if there was an honest media. And that's what I tried to do with TOTT News, was try to give people a genuine alternative that chats about what the people are genuinely talking about. Not saying that these people are a fringe minority and stuff. Everywhere you go, people are talking about this type of stuff, and they just are uninformed because they don't have the right information to source from. So I try to provide that alternative to the mainstream media because they're not doing their jobs properly. And there's not journalists anymore. These are just all prostitutes. They're all actors. They're all young. Yeah, they're all young uni graduates that went through the brainwashing process of learning how to become a journalist and getting their internships. And it's all based on how you look and stuff. And I know plenty of people that work for, know plenty of people that work for mainstream media publications, and they have to have part-time jobs to sustain themselves. There was no money in media since newspapers started dying. They're just on a massive debt system. So it's just, there's few spots that really pay that you can earn a living off of. Most of them are on television, so a lot of them morph their personalities trying to get to that spot, and it's just this weird industry where it's even admitted if you want to be Rupert Murdoch's editor and you don't kiss his ass all the time, he'll just get rid of you. He wants people to just kiss his ass all day, every day. Yes, Mr. Murdoch.
Hey,
and I'm not even
billions of dollars. I'd have people like that around me too. I'm not gonna lie.
That's it, mate. Like, I've even been heard. Clive Palmer. He at his resort, his hotel resort, his big dino park or whatever. If you want to spend something there, if a staff member wants to spend something, that it has to go up the chain of approval to Clive Palmer. Every single thing he has to give the okay call on. For everything that's spent in the resort. It's like they get weird tendencies once you get a lot of money. And
see, I honestly, I can't fucking say because I don't have lots of money, right? But I like to think that if I came into a lot of money, I would be just like, yep, that's it. I've made my money. I'm wiping my hands. I'm disappearing. And I would just pack my family up and disappear. And that'd be me living the high life, or what I call the high life. I understand that people, they get, in these positions of power, or influence, and money, and power corrupts, right? And yeah, I understand that completely. But I like to think that I would just give it up, just one day, just wake up and go, yep, that's my bank. See you later.
I'd love it, man.
Yeah, I think I would too. But like I said, I can't say for sure, but it's a dream.
But it's almost designed that way. The amount of people that you meet that would do that type of stuff if they had money, they were almost put into this reality in that circumstance and then the people that do have money don't appreciate it. They blow it all away because they've been born into it. There's this weird dynamic where the people that appreciate it don't have it and are always striving to get more, and the people that have it don't use it the way that we would use it. They use it for more control and power and see it as the game, so it's a weird dynamic, this value system that's emerged that we all go around on, this whole money rat race that obviously has evolved over the years. It was the perfect sort of system to keep us going, really, wasn't it?
Seems to be. But anyways, I'm going to love and leave you. Thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Too easy, mate.
And I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, mate. No, it was a good chat. Time flies by, obviously, when you're having fun, mate. Have a chat about things. I'm glad we could finally hook it up, and hopefully not the last time, mate, for sure.
Now, I keep forgetting to fucking do this every single episode, but where can we find you?
See, I'm blessed. You didn't forget about that. No, I'm at tottnews.com. You can also catch me. I write for New Dawn magazine and news agents across Australia or online. And yeah, I'm always on there promoting, doing things, writing articles, trying to grow a genuine alternative media source for Australians out there. And I think it's been going good. There's been a lot of support, more and more people waking up to what's going on. And hopefully we can just keep growing and get more support and get people on board and keep growing the team. And maybe one day we'll be a true counter to the mainstream media conglomerates in this country, mate. I'd like to hope so. That's the vision. But if you want to come along for the journey, tottnews.com.
Yeah,
join us.
And your podcast, you mentioned it there before, but
yep, forgot that too. Yeah, the General Knowledge podcast on Podbean, also available iTunes, Spotify, and what have you. This podcast I do with the boys at realnewsaustralia.com. So check that out. It's a free podcast available. You can listen to us have a chat every fortnight about what's going on in the world.
Perfect. Thank you very much, mate.